My stepfather made me restart the dishes every night for 3 years, waiting until the last plate to tell me the water wasn't hot enough. When I finally asked if the water was hot enough for him, he smirked and said, "Now you're learning." I just kept washing. That was 9 months ago. This morning, he was standing outside my dorm in tears. My stepfather Greg was a master at psychological warfare. He'd been married to my mom for 3 years, and in that time, he'd perfected the art of making me miserable while maintaining his image as the responsible parent who was just trying to teach me discipline. His favorite game started when I was 14. Every night after dinner, it was my job to wash the dishes. Greg would wait exactly 15 minutes after I started, then march into the kitchen with this theatrical concern on his face. He'd plunge his hand into the dishwater and gasp like he discovered something horrifying. "This water is ice cold. You trying to spread germs through this whole house? Empty it out and start over with proper hot water." It didn't matter if steam was literally rising from the sink. The water was always too cold, according to Greg. Sometimes he'd wait until I was on the last plate, watching TV from the living room until he heard me getting ready to drain the sink. Then he'd rush in for his performance. The worst part was the smirk. This little satisfied grin as he watched me dump everything out and start over, sometimes for the 3rd time in one night. Mom worked late shifts at the hospital, so she never saw it happen. When I tried telling her, Greg convinced her I was being dramatic about normal parenting. He even told her I was purposely using cold water to rush through my chores. She believed him because why wouldn't she? He was the adult. The breaking point came on a Tuesday in November. I'd already redone the dishes twice that night. My hands were raw from the hot water and harsh dish soap. I was almost done with round 3 when I heard his footsteps. I turned to see him standing in the doorway, already smirking before he'd even tested the water. That's when something in me snapped. He wanted hot water, I'd give him hot water. The next night, I prepared. I filled our largest stock pot with water and set it on the back burner at 5:45, knowing dinner would end around 6:30. By the time I started dishes, that water had been at a rolling boil for 45 minutes. I put on rubber gloves, telling myself they were for the harsh soap. I started washing, making sure to clank the plates loud enough for Greg to hear from his recliner. I kept checking the clock. 14 minutes, 15, 16. Then I heard it. The creak of his recliner footrest snapping shut, his heavy footsteps approaching. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he'd hear it. He walked in with that same superior expression, already rolling up his sleeve. "You know, one day you'll thank me for teaching you proper hygiene standards," he said, approaching the sink. I kept my eyes on the plate I was washing, not trusting myself to look at him. What happened next seemed to occur in slow motion. His hand went into the water with the same dramatic plunge he always did, meant to splash me a little and establish dominance. But this time, instead of his usual disappointed sigh, there was a sound I'd never heard him make before. A high-pitched yelp that turned into a roar. His hand came out so fast it sent water flying across the kitchen. His face went through about 6 different emotions in 2 seconds. Shock, pain, rage, then something I'd never seen before. Fear. He cradled his bright red hand against his chest, looking at me like he was seeing me for the first time. I kept washing dishes, calm as could be, and without looking up said, "Is the water hot enough for you?" For a moment, I thought he might actually hit me. His whole body tensed, his good hand clenched into a fist, but then he saw something in my eyes. Maybe it was the fact that I wasn't scared anymore. Maybe it was the realization that I'd finally fought back. Or maybe he just realized that explaining a burned hand to my mother would raise questions he didn't want to answer. He stood there for what felt like forever, but was probably 10 seconds. Then he turned and walked out without a word. No smirk, no lecture, nothing. That's when the biggest saga of my life began, because the next day I woke up to 16 missed calls from my mom and a text that said, "What did you do to Greg?" I stared at my phone screen in first period calculus while Mr. Peterson droned on about derivatives. More texts kept coming. "Greg is in the emergency room." Then, "His hand is severely burned." Then, "Come home now." My hand stayed steady. Even though my heart was pounding so hard I thought everyone would hear it, I knew this was it. The moment everything would change. I asked for a bathroom pass and walked straight to the parking lot instead. My hands shook as I dialed Mom's number. She picked up on the first ring and started screaming about how Greg said I deliberately burned him with boiling water and how he was talking about pressing charges for assault. I forced myself to sound confused instead of defensive, asking what she was talking about, saying I just did the dishes like always. The drive home took forever, even though I was going slow on purpose.